Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for your time, for answering our questions. Actually, we are from Darjeeling Wet Scene from Lima, Peru. Uh, First of all, how are you, by the way? How is the band? I know this is a difficult time for everyone around the world due to the pandemic.
Yeah,
So,
we're doing all right. I mean, it has been a tough year. We had to unfortunately cancel now two different tours. We had to cancel a U.S. tour, and then we were going to be visiting and playing in Europe for the very first time ever in October, but unfortunately had to cancel that. So it's been a little bit of a bummer of a year, but at the same time, this is happening to everyone. So I can't really complain because I think every musician right now is in the exact same position. So you know we're just trying to hang in there. We're just trying to be productive with the time that we have. Just trying to remain positive and just keep working and you know being productive until things open up again.
oh, I see. Well, in general, art and especially the musical industry is one of the most affected, definitely, industries. A lot of cancellations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know it's difficult considering that most bands depend on concerts nowadays, as I can see. But well, I read that not everything are actually bad news because you were signed by Century Media recently this year. So, what can you tell us about that? Because I'm surprised that a band like Wilderun, you have been working independently for a long time, and now you're finally under in this case, under this level, Century Media. So, what can you tell us about that? Why not before? Maybe why were you working independently?
I mean, honestly, a lot of it was not by choice. A lot of it was just I mean, we tried contacting labels before. When we released Sleep at the Edge of the Earth in 2015, we sent that record to pretty much pretty much every record label that we could think of and to different, agents and stuff. And unfortunately, it just didn't get picked up. I'm not really sure why. I mean, part of it was probably just that we were an unknown name, and I'm sure that we don't write short, catchy singles either. We write fairly long. Yeah, it's probably a little bit more difficult to sell 11-minute songs or whatever. But I don't know, for one reason or another, that record just didn't get picked up. So we decided, okay, well, we got to keep working, we got to keep making music regardless of if anyone picks us up. So let's make the next record and let's self-release it. And then I think what happened was that we finally decided to hire a PR company for the Veil of Imagination self-release. And I think that got us enough notice that the word got out enough. And then finally, some of the labels actually started getting back to us. So I don't know if it was mostly because of the PR company or if it was just the music in particular on Veil of Imagination that grabbed people more. But it worked out this time around. So for some reason, this was just the time where everything kind of lined up. So yeah, and we're really happy that Century Media got in touch with us, and it's been great so far. So yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And I think the next plan is to re-release Veil of Imagination with Century Media, right? When is that going to happen? Next month, if I'm not wrong?
Yeah, July 17th. So about what is so exactly 1 month. Exactly 1 month from today, it'll be re-released.
Oh, okay. And well, the album it's was released around 7 months ago, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
Uh, and well, how are you feeling actually by now with media's and people's response to the album? Can we say that this is maybe like a landmark in Wilderland career, maybe?
Yeah, I could say that. I mean, definitely as far as our exposure and reception goes. I mean, we've generally, we've released 3 records, and all 3 records have been generally pretty well received. I don't think we've had a dud yet, but
No.
but it's the main difference with Veil of Imagination is just the exposure. I think that the first two records were a more limited audience, and we've just spent those years kind of slowly building up our audience online and trying to get out there, and I think that's paid off because I think that everything kind of came together with the Veil of Imagination release, and yeah, but I think beyond just the exposure to, I think musically we started to get a bit more adventurous and experimental, and just I'd like to think it's our most creative record so far. So I think that resonated with a lot of people too. I think that it was maybe a little bit more exciting because of the music, and yeah, I don't know if I'm able to personally say if it's a landmark record, but it seems to, I could understand if people saw it that way for sure.
Well, yeah, as you said, two previous records also were well received by me in general, and I think people, your fans in general. Well, yeah. I had the chance to listen to the three albums, and yeah, the three are really good. But I can notice that your sound was like still growing. I mean, yeah. In the last Veil of Imagination, we can say that it's like a continuation of the previous one, but it's more bombastic, and you explore more sounds in general. So what can you tell us, for example, what is the difference between the Wilderun that was working in the first album and Wilderun working for in the making of Veil of Imagination? Do you feel that the band changed a lot, maybe, or you grow a lot as musicians?
Yeah, I would say in certain ways, yes, but then in other ways, there's a lot of things that have still maintained. I mean, first of all, it's still all the same guys. We haven't changed any members, so it is still the same people, except for we did add one member in 2015, our lead guitarist, Joe, who did help change some of the sound. But I think overall, though, I think just the mission of the band has changed a little bit, even though we're all still the same people and we all still play more or less in the same way. The goal and the mission of the band has evolved over time. When we started in 2012, we definitely were just I would just call us pretty much a folk metal band, and our kind of mission for the first record was to make a folk metal record that had like a very American sort of feel to it, where we pulled material from American traditional folk music and old American folk tales and things like that. And that was the goal for the first record. And you know, we're still proud of that record. We still like it a lot. But after we did that record, I think we just realized that we wanted to start switching things up, and we realized, we kind of looked into the future and realized if a career entirely based around that American folk metal thing felt a little limiting, I think. Mm-hmm. So we just wanted to be like, okay, let's start expanding. Let's start getting just a bit more creative. And I think that happened on Sleep at the Edge of the Earth. Sleep at the Edge of the Earth was still very much rooted in folk metal, but was a lot more expansive and kind of and progressive, I suppose. And then I think Veil of Imagination continued that expansion and that experimentation, but the folk metal side just has kind of been not put away. I think there are still folk metal elements on this record, but we just didn't focus on it as much. We didn't worry as much about that specific genre. We didn't worry about, oh, are we going to fit into this genre or that genre? We just sort of let our minds go a little bit more free, I think, on this record, and just let ourselves get a little weirder. I don't know, like just kind of just let ourselves experiment more, you know, and just and I think that's, you know, that's why I think like this record so much, is it feels the most free, it feels the most confident in a way. So, yeah.
I see. And well, something that we mentioned and you also mentioned already is that You always try to, in this case, your sound was even growing and getting more sounds. Something that I like about, for example, modern metal is like that. Now it's difficult to make a band stick to one sound. You pick up different influence. But also on the other side, modern metal, I have seen a lot of bands that, they pick up a lot of catchy elements from pop music. So how do you see the metal scene nowadays? How do you feel about that? Also, there are bands that are still playing classic sounds. They try to sound like the '80s, so it's quite
Yeah,
diverse now. So
yeah.
how do you feel about the musical industry now in terms in metal industry in general?
I mean, I think overall the metal industry is going pretty strong. I mean, I think that at least for me personally and with my tastes, you still kind of have to go a little underground. Like the most popular bands are still a little bit, conventional and focus more on the catchy hooks and things like that, which is fine. I think that there's the more pop oriented metal bands that are, it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that they're simpler and a little bit catchier, and that's fine. But I think that's the beautiful thing about metal, though, is that it's almost impossible to just call metal one thing. It's so many different things now, especially in the last 20 years, the way that metal has expanded into so many different weird subgenres and really started mixing in with different other genres. And I think it's great. I mean, I think that, you have to search. There's so many bands now that it's almost overwhelming. You need to almost take time to hunt online for all the different things, which can be difficult. But if you're interested and you're willing to make the effort to track down different bands and do a little bit of research, then there's so much. It's so eclectic. So I think it's going great. I mean, it's from a business standpoint, we're at a little bit of a strange point because there's a lot of really creative bands that, it's hard to make a living on. But so that's a little bit more tricky of a conversation. But musically and creatively, I think it's going really great. I think it's probably as good as it's ever been.
Yeah. And well, going back to the last album, something that I really like is the balance in your sound. From my point of view, sometimes for many bands, modern bands, it's quite difficult to keep a good balance in the sound where you had so many elements, so many instruments, but the last album sounds really, really good, actually. And you had also this balance between melody and also very heavy sound, and there is a soft sound. It's an album that in times where most people don't have time to listen to music, invite us to, stay calm, play the CD, and enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
So for now, I was telling you this because considering that you were working independently, when I look for the information for the last album, I have seen names like Dan Suano and Jets Bogren. So even if we had the chance nowadays to do everything at home by our own, because the technology allows us to do that, it seems that their job is still very important. So what's your opinion about that? About this, the work that they do in mastering, mixing the album, for example?
I mean, I still think it's really important. I mean, yeah, it's you're right. We do have much more the ability to do things from home, and buying home recording equipment and digital music equipment is becoming cheaper and more available, and that's great. I mean, I think that is a good thing, but to still make something really masterful, I mean, you still have to devote a lot of time and effort into it to become a master of your craft. Like, just because you're able to purchase the latest equipment and the latest technology doesn't mean that you're going to be able to know how to use it as well as someone like Dan Suano and Jens Boger. And so I still think there's and bands who are really serious, artists who are really serious about their sound and want to create something really professional and want to create something, well, not only professional but also creative and interesting. You still have to work with people that have a lot of knowledge and experience. I think I have I have a hard time believing that technology is ever going to make that sort of mastery of the craft obsolete. So I mean, we were super happy with Dan Swano and Jens Bogeren's production on the record, and I don't think that we could have made it sound like that with any sort of home recordings type setup. So yeah, I still think that that sort of position is very valuable.
Oh, okay, that's true. And also, would like to talk about also the artwork for the last album. What can you tell us about that? I think it's probably the most one of the most beautiful covers that I have seen in 2019. If I'm not wrong, that was done by Adrian Kotz.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about this cover?
We had actually just been a fan of his for a few years, and funny enough, he is actually a fan of our music, like prior to us making this record. Like, I think I actually forget who got in touch with who, but we've been in contact with him since maybe 2016 or something, and we're honestly both just fans of each other's work. And then when it came time to make this album, we were just kind of exploring different artists. Whenever we, need to make some new artwork, we just kind of go and try to just look at different artists and their different catalogs. And one of the first people we thought of was him because we knew we liked him so much. And at first we were going to commission him to do an original piece, but we were looking through his previous works and his works for licensing, and we came across that painting, which is called The Veil of Summer, which partially influenced the name of the album, Veil of Imagination. And as soon as I saw it, I was just like, that's it. Like, I mean, maybe it took me about 10 minutes of thinking about it to decide that that was the cover, because not only did it atmospherically and aesthetically fit exactly what we were going to be going for musically, but I was able to immediately sort of connect it to some of the lyrical themes, kind of obscurely, like not a direct connection to the lyrics, but in sort of just really subtle, weird ways. I realized that it kind of lined up lyrically with a lot of the stuff that I was talking about on the record. And so it just honestly, it felt sort of serendipitous. Like it was awesome that this was a guy we already knew who loved our music, and we loved his art, and that piece fit so perfectly. So we just went with it, and luckily he licensed it to us, and it worked out.
Oh, okay. That sounds cool, especially because for an album that it sounds so artistic, I think it's very important for me to pick at the right cover. Sometimes the cover of an album invites you to listen to that, and maybe not all the bands had the time to think about very well about the covers. I have seen some terrible covers last year, but that one is definitely one of the best ones.
Yeah, we were really happy with it.
And well, what's next actually for Wilderun? What are your plans? Of course, you cannot tour right now. The situation is very uncertainty now. But are you, after that re-releasing of Veil of Imagination, are you planning to work on a next record or maybe a DVD or something like that?
Well, we are already working on the next record. Actually, cool. I mean, from my end, I'm always just writing music, even if it's just little bits here and there. I always, even when I'm not actively thinking about a new record, I'm writing just something. So the new record is already starting to get pieced together. It's too early to tell what it's going to be. It's still just in the beginning stages, but we're working on it. So, and yeah, that's the next thing. We'd love to do a DVD. We talked about that a couple of times, like a live. It would be really fun to do some sort of live DVD. I mean, that might be a little tricky to do right now, but if we can plan it for sometime in the near future, that'd be great. No plans for it, but that's a great idea. But the only other concrete plan we have is actually in the. I don't. It hasn't been announced everywhere yet, but our manager said that it's okay for me to announce this. Is that we're going to be touring Europe in the fall of 2021, opening up for soil work.
Ah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your first time, right, in Europe?
Yeah, unless we can get over there even earlier, but depending on what happens. But if we can't get there any earlier, then that will be fall 2021 will be the first time. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, fingers crossed. Let's see. The
Yeah.
situation is complicated now, but hopefully everything should be okay by then.
Yeah.
So, well, we are coming to the end of our interview. Maybe any last word for your fans in South America and in Latin America right now? I know it's also very difficult times for us here, but well, any last word for your fans?
Just thank you to anyone down there who's been listening to our music, who's either bought a CD or honestly just checked it out and shown it to their friends. I mean, word of mouth is the best exposure that you can get. So, and I know that we have. I mean, we have the Wilderun fan population in South America is a little bit less than Europe or America, but it seems to be slowly growing. Like the more years that have gone on, the few more CDs I'll send down to South America. So it's really cool to see a small fan base growing down there, and hopefully it'll keep growing. And that's really cool. And maybe one day we can make it down there. That'd be really awesome to actually be able to play South America one day. So yeah, just thank you for the interview, and thank you to all the fans down there. And yeah.
Well, again, thank you very much for your time in this interview. We wish you all the best for Wilder's career now with Century Media. And I hope the situation will be better in the U.S. Well, in general, in all the countries, especially a lot of people are suffering, and the musical industry also is having a lot of troubles with this. So again, thank you very much for your time, and wish you all the best. Congratulations again for the last album. It's awesome. So keep growing like that. Thank you very much.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much, Pedro. Good talking to you.
Okay, it's nice to meet you. Have a nice day.
You too. Take care.